So when you consider wealth, wealth, again, is where every asset loves hocus pocus. Now, hocus pocus is magic. Assets are the things that create wealth for the wealthy. It's an asset. Now, an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. That's all it's defined as. Difference between an asset and what the opposite would be considered is a liability. Liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Now, there may be a number of different definitions out there, or definitions that you've heard that are different, but those are the two that the wealthy actually use to become wealthier. And with that, there is another acronym that I like to use, and that acronym is TIRE, but it's TIRE with two I's. So, what does it stand for? Well, these are the 5 things that every wealthy person knows. 5 things that every wealthy person knows. Now, remember we talked about money doesn't solve money problems? Well, once someone knows how to address and solve problems, and again, we talked about that within the compete framework, the next stage is then optimizing finance and how it works. So when you optimize finance, you want to make sure that you have everything tuned so that you are benefiting from the financial system. Now, if you're in a position right now where you feel disadvantaged because more money is going out to other companies and vendors and whatever than coming in, then it's just a challenge that you have with your system. You need to optimize your system. So with this particular focus for the TIRE, the TIRE framework is that what the wealthy do is they make sure they understand these 5 characteristics, these 5 disciplines, in order to have the financial system work for them. So, if anything, consider this to be a solution on how to allow the financial system to work in your favor as opposed to be working against you. Now, that's something very, very important. Again, we're focusing particularly on finance today. We're not focused on the bigger gamut of problems. But in order to address this appropriately, we have to make sure that we know what those 5 things are. So I use the acronym TIRE because it's easier for me to remember. So the first letter is T. T stands for taxes. The wealthy understand taxes very, very well. They understand that the tax code was created to create more benefit than it was to actually pay tax. Of the hundreds of pages that exist, only a small section actually talks about collecting taxes. The majority of the tax code talks about how to get deductions and exemptions from paying tax. So if you ever hear that the wealthy, they need to pay more tax, that's not it. They are doing everything in their power to help the economy grow and help the government. And as a result, the incentives are they don't have to pay tax. But a lot of people don't understand and know that because they see wealth as something that is hocus pocus or magic. And for that, based on their beliefs, they believe that, well, they need to tax the wealthy. But all the wealthy are doing is exactly what the government wants, so they're not paying taxes. So that's one really important point to understand. The wealthy don't pay taxes. And that's just like, I know that's got to be an eye-opener because it was for me the first time I heard it. But there's a reason for that, and that's because they're doing exactly what they need to do, so the government incentivizes them and either reduces or eliminates those taxes altogether. So isn't it nice to understand that so you understand why the wealthy are wealthy and how to create that for yourself? So that's why taxes are so important. Next is insurance. So what does insurance do? Insurance protects against loss. That's really important because once you actually create a lot of wealth, you don't just want to see it evaporate and disappear. You want it to hang out and hang around. And there's always a higher risk of the more you have, the more that could be at risk. But that's what insurance is there for. It's there to protect in case anything happens. You're covered, right? So that's what insurance does. So the wealthy want to make sure they have the appropriate amount of insurance. And you can insure just about anything these days, not just a car or a house. You can insure a life, all right? You can insure your teeth, your body, your health, a number of different things. If the insurance company will create a policy for it, you can get covered for it. So it's very good to understand that entire framework of what do you need to make sure that you protect? Next is investment. Now, this one I'm particularly fond of because what investment talks about is this idea of if your money represents your children, you not only want your children to come back and visit and see them regularly so you know they're in good health and they're operating at their peak capacity for you, but also that you have grandchildren that are coming on the way. So the way that I look at children is the money you have, and the way I look at grandchildren is the interest that money creates. So you always want to grow. That's actually just a law of physics. You're either growing or you're dying. So the wealthy always want their family, which again, in the case of finance, their monetary family to grow with the children and the grandchildren. So they do that through investments, and they actually put their money out there so the money actually does the work for them. So this whole idea of work ethic, the wealthy don't have to work for their money when they can allow their money to work for them. So that's this whole idea of investing in the things that will allow your money to grow. And so it's something that we all need to learn about, that we all need to know. But you have to do your homework and your research to get a little bit better sense of how that actually works. Next is retirement. So retirement is something you do not want to miss, because when you are at a point where you're no longer able to do certain things, you still want to make sure that you have a nest egg that's waiting there for you. And there are a number of different retirement vehicles that exist, and they may be doing a couple things as far as being protected against loss in some cases. That's what some retirement accounts do. And retirement accounts also maybe give you some tax incentives for the fact that you're not actually paying taxes at all. But it's important to understand how retirement works so that you can start moving and shifting the things around that are going to benefit you the most when you're at a point where you want to change or do something different, and you don't want to have to worry about money being something that you have to continue to acquire. If anything, everything's in place and working for you. So again, retirement is really important to just understand that and understand what needs will you have and how they change as you get older. That's probably the biggest thing to understand with that. And then last but not least, one of my favorites, estate planning. Now, no one really talks about very much about estate planning unless someone's really old or they just don't have very much time left. So that's unfortunate, because retirement's the same way. It's like no one's really worried about retirement until someone's old or they're not going to be able to work anymore. But you actually want to start with that as early as humanly possible, because you know it's coming down the road. And just start it early. So the whole idea of estate planning, what it does is it talks about this idea of when you are no longer here, for everything that you have, where will it go? Who will it get distributed to? Who gets what? But it's incredibly powerful because it avoids a lot of the taxes and a lot of the challenges that you have when someone passes away. Because you may have certain issues you have to deal with, such as probate, and having to go through this entire process of publicly disclosing everything that you own and who gets what, and giving creditors a chance to make their claims and everything. It can be incredibly painful. I had to go through that process for my late mother, who had no will, and a process that literally should have only taken a few months got very messy and ended up being a few years. And so that's time that I lost. That's time that I don't get back. And so I made it personally. I made a personal pact for myself to educate people on estate planning and to make sure that they don't have to deal with anything that I had to go through. So that's why that one's near and dear to my heart, because I recognize the pain that can happen when you don't do it properly. And I also recognize the value in creating wealth and passing it down to your family and the generations afterwards if you do it properly. So each of those 5 elements that come within TIIRE are the 5 things that every wealthy person knows. Every wealthy person knows. Now here's the thing. You need to know enough about each so that you are well versed in what you want to do and how you make decisions, but you also want to employ professionals that can teach you more of what you may not know. So the whole idea is not just to have these 5 elements in place, but it's also to have an understanding of how they work and having professionals continue to work and teach with you to help increase your knowledge and to help increase the effect and your end results of creating wealth. So if you want to optimize your results, remember, you need to have the right TIIRES in place. TIIRES, again, are taxes, insurance, investment, retirement, and estate planning. So I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you received value from this framework, this TIIRE framework, and there's a lot to it. So we're going down level by level. I'm going through the framework so you get a better sense and understanding of how things work. But this is where you start figuring out, okay, how am I doing in each? So if anything, the recommendations I would have is do an audit across the board to see, based on where you are you doing what you need to in each of these categories? And that can be very helpful with a checklist, and it can also be very helpful with a test of one sort or another, which, again, I always have information, and as I have that, I'll make sure I share it with you. But I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks again. Always good information hopefully I'm putting out, so if there is, please leave a comment. If it's something that resonates with you, please subscribe, and I look forward to catching you again on a future episode. All right, bye.